All right. Hi, Farah.
Hi.
Thank you so much. I would love to hear how you would describe your experience in the herbalism of the Soul program.
It's been a wonderful experience. Beginning with the toolkit that established building blocks for um, creating a meditative space, and somewhat like stepping stones to allow the mind to go to a place of connection with plants. The objective initially, being communication with different plants, but also a broader understanding of my own energetic and spiritual system, body. And each of the classes, like I said, has been a wonderful way of building on the previous to continue to expand and enhance um, the experience, the abilities, um, excellent um, methods to practice on your own. And so the class has been extremely helpful in advancing my skills in that area.
Amazing. Yeah. And do you like, how do you find yourself bringing the tools into your life? Do you use them throughout the day?
Yes, you know, frankly, I have found myself in, how do I say it? I guess things pop up, on a day-to-day basis that are, in the way that I have kind of been using it, is sort of uncontrolled scenarios that might create a little turmoil or, um, you know, situations that where I want to kind of calm my system,
Mhm.
calm my energetic system, calm my spirit, and I am able to step back into those tools, utilize them to get back to a grounded space where I'm better equipped to sort of meet the day. And so in that situation, so certainly while it's been the classes have been effective at me communicating on my own with plants, they also have been effective for me to establish a pattern and a home base for getting my energetic system to a calm state when needed.
Amazing. Beautiful. Um, yeah, I think that a lot of people come in attracted to the work with the plants, being able to communicate with plants, because there's this inner knowing that we have that there's something more there, that it's not just like you make a tincture, you take the tincture, and you're what something changes, you're healed, or it's not that simple. Like there's more going on, and we're just so curious to step into that communication, right?
Yes.
And um, And then we start the program the first 3 weeks without communicating with any plants. And we
Mhm.
just do the tools, and that's our primary focus. Um, and once you start learning the tools, it's like, I mean, those for me in my life have been the biggest game changer. So,
Yes, and I will also say that as class progresses, you know, you start with these tools and you start with sort of an instructional format, you know, first step, second step, third step. But as the class progresses, you realize how those steps you can become creative with how you utilize those steps, that it doesn't have to be mm, a regimented sequence of how you might implement those steps to create a particular state or
yeah.
or move into communication per se. You know, they are malleable and workable to an individual's particular way of um, both communicating and I would say again coming to mm, acclimating themselves to a meditative state.
Yeah.
And you know, as I have become more experienced with communicating with plants, I realize that the real work is in carving out the time to have that be a focus of study. So it's almost it's pretty easy to, I mean, if you are an herbalist, if you're working with plants or um, spending time out in nature, in some ways those are easy, right? That's physical world. And I think for me, the next step is we need to spend time in honing that practice, building that confidence, continuing to connect, continuing to um, select the plants that I'm most interested in engaging with, creating and establishing a continued relationship with those plants. And so that's kind of the next phase, and that's you know, the work to be done. That's the homework, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I think that what you said, carving out the time is kind of that might be the biggest challenge with this
Mhm.
program. Um, there and people, we all, everyone, because we continue now with our container, everyone um, kind of goes to pretty great lengths to make a time to do this. It's not like
Yes.
everyone's busy. We don't really have time in our schedules. I think I love that you brought that up because I think it's very easy for me as a mom of three to say I don't have time to teach this program. I have three kids. Like I don't have time, right? And
Mhm.
I did play out that narrative for a number of years, um, and just came to a point where I was like, I can't keep pushing my dreams and my visions and the things I want to do out into the future, like out into once my kids are grown, I will start to give to myself
Right.
in this
Yes.
way. Um, and it took a leap of faith, it took discipline, a number of things. But there's just something special about this work, and yeah, I,
And I don't think it should be discounted that, or I think one constantly sort of needs to be reminded that, um, just like anything else, it's training. You know, you have to, continue to train
yeah,
to, for that to be, um, for those skills to be continue to be honed and developed
yeah,
and expanded upon. Um, you know, as you know, I believe that um, as we continue to develop those skills, more and more information becomes available to us.
yeah,
And again, it's so easy to say I'll do it later. You know, you reach a milestone, perhaps a personal milestone, and it's like, oh my gosh, I did that. That was amazing. That was an amazing experience. File that away, right? And then, but you have to build on it. You have to build on it, or the months and the years go by, and it's like, oh, I remember when I did that, and I wonder if it's still there. I wonder if it's still viable. I wonder if it's something that I can continue to build on. Um, and so, again, I kind of like to think of it as, it's easy to, or maybe not easy, but everyone's used to ticking off the boxes on the, day-to-day to-do list, in the physical world. But as far as mental, emotional, spiritual health, like I think those things kind of get relegated to the last. And I think as we move forward as humans, we have to realize like there has to be a little bit more of a balance, or as humans continue to evolve, that
Yeah.
that balance really
Yeah.
has.
It does. It takes discipline. It's like, going to the gym or something.
Hmm.
Oh,
Hmm.
remember those 3 months where I went to the gym? Like, I wonder, like I wonder if that's still got that spark. Like you just have to do it. You had like if you do it, if you show up, it opens, it unfolds. We're not doing physical training, we're doing, more spiritual training, but it does have physical world effects. For me personally, I
Yes,
have a lot of health issues as well as, manifestation things that come in as a byproduct of this work,
yes,
for sure. Um, and I also love what you spoke about the tools being malleable. I kind of build in this systematic way. Here are the 6 tools. We're going to work them in this order. We're going to practice them. That's the opening to every class, right? And then you start to learn. I think about it almost like a tool, like a carpenter's toolkit. Like,
hmm
here's your hammer, here are your nails, here's your saw, here's whatever the tools are, here's your
hmm
level. Um, and you can do anything with them. What do you want to build? You want to build a table, you want to build a chair, you want to build a house. That's very comparable energetically to how we can work with the tools. We can build whatever we want with them. And um, it's pretty incredible. They're yeah. Um, it's hard to describe in words, because it's so much of an experience, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah. Um, and are there any experiences with plant medicine, in the class or outside of class? I know this is our second meeting because I had a few interruptions in our first meeting, with some children coming into the room, but um, I know you shared some with me before, but uh, is there would you like to speak more about
Sure.
those, or is there anything else
Yes,
maybe that's
yes.
come across then?
I've actually had several really impactful experiences with plant communication in the class. Um, One was with Yarrow, and I believe it was one of the first sessions where I was leading the communication, um, and working with um, the rose and the rings. And pretty quickly, a lot of information started to come to me from yarrow in regard to some of its medicinal uses, but I that very quickly transitioned into how to more of an emotional communication. And so I do get a lot of visuals, lot of visual imagery, and sometimes I can hear there's auditory suggestion or communication. And it was almost as if while the information was being, visually appeared, and had an understanding of what that visual information meant, um, above and beyond that, what came through was something that touched me very deeply emotionally. And the only way, and because I was leading this reading, and I'm talking and telling, the people in the few that were in our room what was going on, I had to stop because I started to cry, and it was just it welled up from out of nowhere. And I have had that experience before with elder, um, being next to elder and sitting with elder and waiting for imagery to drop in. But instead, what happened, and it was almost like something was released, something that had been locked or frozen or intact, in the heart region was just softened and released, and it was able to come up in the form of an emotional release, and tears. And it was, as with Elder, that was the first time it had happened. It was with Elder, and it was a really impactful experience because it showed me that communication doesn't only have to be in imagery. It doesn't only have to be in words. It can be sensory, it can be feeling, and it was really sort of mind-blowing for me because I was like, that's communication too. That is a significant form of communication. And also one in where you know, nothing was forced. It was almost like a wand was waved and something was released. And so with Yarrow, it was a similar thing. And thinking back on it, it was interesting because it was like information, information, information. And then it was like, poof. And then it was like, again, that emotional release that I was not expecting. And so I asked everybody, I was like, give me a minute because in the way I said it was, I'm getting a healing from Yarrow. And so I allowed that to move through me. And, um, and then afterwards, there was more imagery, but I felt like it was such a profound experience that I thanked Yarrow. And I really felt like it was a great place to close that communication. And so that was one experience, one really wonderful experience. And again, it reinforced that idea that a communication can be a healing, it can be sensory. Um, Other experiences have been where I have led the group in reading past lives of plants. And after a couple of really very, very detailed, you know, um, past lives of different plants that I've seen come through, and I'm talking and I'm describing these things, these eras, these times, the ways that plants were used, that humans have used them, these plants, and getting a sense of where they were, how far, how long ago, geographically, the types of peoples that were using them. After two or three experiences, I started to think like this very well could be my past life experience with these plants. That that thought really began to resonate with me. And of course, it makes it that much more profound to consider the information in that way. And
Mm.
so, and so to be able to read the past life of these plants and potentially see how I, in a past life, might have interacted with and worked with these plants again. Um, has really catapulted my learning and my ability to work with plants on a spiritual level.
That's really beautiful. Thanks, Farah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know what else to say.
I will say, the one thing that I have been thinking about in regards to this class and for me personally is where do I want to take this? Initially I first wanted to communicate with plants as a form of spiritual fulfillment. I've always been my spiritual belief system has is founded in the natural world. That is what I have grown up relying on as um, I think people attend church, people practice religions and have spiritual practices because it's an aspect of being human, but also it allows us to walk through our days and in those moments that become challenging and trying, what do we fall back on? And for me, it's always been nature. And so, probably in my 20s, I guess, early 20s, I read a couple of books that discussed plant communication, and I thought this is the next step on my path. This is where I would like to go. And I'd already been studying to some degree, just mildly studying energetic healing and I was very interested in different healing modalities. And I thought, somehow, that somewhere plant communication might become a part of that at some point. And so now it has taken some time for me to feel like I've established a solid foundation for plant communication. And so now that I feel like that foundation, plant communication 101 is complete, where do I see this going? And so that again, kind of speaking back to where I mentioned like continuing to study, continuing to practice, selecting the plants that you'd like to create partnerships with, that are on your plant path, your life path. And so that I think is sort of the next phase for me is, you know, where, how do the plants want to use me? How, instead of how do I want to use these plants, like what have I sort of already mapped out for myself? Have the plants mapped out for me? Um, how can I be of service? And so that's sort of the next um, phase, I think, for me in this work.
Beautiful. Yeah. Um, yeah, and that's interesting, I mean, with the ongoing container and the readings and, what we're like learning to do moving forward. Um, yeah, it's just such a profound and beautiful question to be asking because yeah, it's like where do we want to take this? Because I hold the space for us to learn this kind of method that I stumbled upon and um, wove together through various experiences of life. And yeah, I'll be excited to see where you move with it all.
I think I would in some way like to um, marry it with my herbalism practice.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that the different directions that it can go are are myriad. And
Yeah,
so I'll just kind of
keep
continue to
listening.
practice and see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. I mean, there's very clear ways to weave this directly into, an herbal medicine making practice or even like a clinical practice
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
people.
Yeah.
Um, and is there anything else that comes to mind or any ways that, you see there could have is any additions that you would like to have in the program or
Hmm.
um, any ways that I could provide, even more support for the next round of students? Um,
Hmm. I don't think anything in terms of more support. I think incredibly supportive. Um, I will say, and this is something that I've emailed you about, is that your meditations are lovely. You have a beautiful voice. You have a lovely tempo when creating when leading meditations. And so, if anything, I would say you could create more meditations to make available for anyone that might want to purchase them.
I think the way, so I love that. And as I'm, reflecting on that, because I think that is very valuable to have those um, shorter meditations because our classes are quite long, right? Um, but just to gather students for maybe a 30-minute meditation, because what I have found with recording meditations versus teaching a class,
Mm,
I love to teach people. And because so much of teaching for me is psychically interactive,
mm,
when I don't have students in front of me, um, to because I'm healing myself as I'm teaching. I'm using the tools and noticing where students are at and addressing their different things and clearing that out in myself. When I don't have that group, then I'm like the energy doesn't flow quite right. It's kind of like
mm,
for me as a teacher, I found there needs to be like this back and forth, or I don't get to heal myself as I teach, which is a super important part. Um, but I do agree, like, um, that I would love to just expand this work in a way that I can provide those more succinct, like, here's a 30-minute thing. Because, some people want to dip their toes in before they, dive into the pool, basically, right? Because that's what we do in our program. We dive into the pool all the way. So um, I'll look at how, I could make some time to do that with a group of either new or existing students.
mm. And in thinking about that, so, the other thing that I mean, this is just sort of a side thing. And the other thing that I have enjoyed about this class is that um, some of the meditations are unexpected. And you mentioned that they function as healings, and they are. And I think what's important to remember about this work is that um, while we have these stepping stones to move into a meditative space, there are other aspects of meditation that can be incorporated that um, not only, yes, they heal. It heals us, it allows for healing within us, but it's also clearing us as channels, right? Clearing out things that might weigh us down and um, might impede our ability to connect with plants or connect with our spirit selves or to have a better understanding of our spirit selves. And so, these different meditations, I think, are great, um, again, great tools to create potential for those different types of inner healings to take place.
Yes, thank you. So my little one, she needed mama. She's got a
A
little,
little breakfast number two.
yeah, a little breakfast number how many? I don't know. Can't count how many breakfasts. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Farah.
Of course, yes.
I we got a good clear
Yes.
good clear time. Ayla just needed mama right at the end there, right? You want to say hi, Ayla?
How are you? I've seen you before. I've
Yeah.
seen you before.
little one. Oh, my baby.
So, what's happening this week in class?
So this week, I actually need to look at that. Last, I need to look at. So last week we did healing. So we're back to kind of the beginning, because I'm doing the kind of the rhythm of four. I'm gonna stop the recording.
Okay.
Um,
Do you feel like you got what